So good evening again. We're trying to walk that tightrope and find that delicate balance between respecting your time, because you were here on time, and also having a little bit of patience and courtesy for those people who are late for no reason of their own. But I'm going to start and do a little bit of housekeeping, and once I'm done, I'm going to go right to introducing the Minister of Wellness, Nathaniel Jordan. So I first want to do something that's very important. It's very natural for me as I stand here on the stage of the digital auditorium at the Blackburn Center at Howard University. And y'all know what that is. There were some people here who were here the last time. Howard University, the greatest institution of higher learning in the history of the world. Woo, woo. That was you, right? Okay, so I have to thank President Frederick, Board of Trustees, and all the folks who help make this place available to us. In order to put something on like this, we have gotten the support, the very kind support of Pohanka Auto Group. It's an operation and an organization that I have had the good fortune of having a relationship with for 44 years now. When I first came out of Howard in 1974, I started working with them, and it's just been a great relationship. And they are supporting us in numerous ways. And as we attempt to expand and expose our community and the whole DMV to this message of what is happening to us, the genocide that is being caused by the food that we're consuming, by how we are being tricked by advertising, the diabolical behavior of the fast food industry, of Big Pharma, and sometimes the medical industry. As we continue to do that, we're very much appreciative that the Pohanka family and the Pohanka Auto Group has been supporting us. I'm probably going to miss somebody here along the way, but this message is catching on. It is catching on to the extent that over the last few weeks, we had an opportunity to have exposure on WPFW on multiple occasions, on WOL, on Radio 1 shows with Carl Nelson. I want to say a humongous thank you to Roland Martin and his team. His team, the brother back here in the red hat, Anthony, is here. And this broadcast, this lecture tonight, is being shown around the world via Roland Martin's social media platforms, YouTube, Periscope, Facebook. So for Roland, who is a seasoned, hardened journalist, who understands how to keep it real and who understands what is real, for him to support and embrace us is something that we are extremely, extremely grateful for. So a big shout out to Roland Martin and his media team. This morning, Nathaniel spent part of the morning rush hour on with the Black Eagle, Joe Madison. And Joe Madison also was extremely supportive. And so when we start to garner and capture that kind of exposure, we know that we are on the right track. I am here as a part of this because back in November, and I'm going to publish these pictures more widely, maybe tonight before I go to sleep or something, but I was down in Charlotte, North Carolina over the Thanksgiving holidays and to see my 3 beautiful granddaughters. And there was a brother there that I was just sitting in the lobby. I had a blue t-shirt with white lettering on, that said straight out of Howard University. And I'm just sitting in the lobby, you know, just very relaxed, you know, sort of unconscious of myself. And a brother snapped a picture with me and my two puppies, Monty and Bodie. Monty is going to be 5 years old tomorrow, so everybody wish her a happy birthday. So he took the picture, and, you know, like about a week later, he sent me the copy. And I looked, and I was like so fat. I mean, it's like, God, I didn't know I was. I mean, I had been eating and trying to put, like, okay, I don't want to keep gaining this weight, but I keep eating late at night butter pecan ice cream and chocolate cake and sweet, what is it called? Hot and sweet Utz potato chips. That was after my 2 o'clock throwdown of fried chicken, mashed potatoes and gravy, a double order string beans, cornbread, a couple of things of sweet tea, after a huge 4-egg breakfast with either ham, or sometimes I would get, you know, I'd be healthy and get fried catfish. But if I got the fried catfish, I always got a side of crispy. Come back to this table with no bacon that ain't crispy. Make it crispy. And a couple of biscuits. And I had sweet tea for breakfast also. And I just kept expanding. And I was like, I don't want to keep expanding, but I couldn't like figure it out. I never connected the dots. And this brother, Nathaniel Jordan, he reached out, we connected. Make a long story short, I implored him to come to Washington, D.C. from St. Louis, Missouri. I said, man, I don't want to go out like this. There was plenty of times I thought, maybe, you know what, hell, I'm 66 years old, and, you know, I'm fat, and, you know, I've kind of really lived a life. I just keep on being fat, but I didn't want to go out like that. I'm an athlete. I'm a former All-American baseball player at the university that's the greatest institution of higher learning in the history of the world, Howard University. I was an athlete here, man. I don't want to go out like that. So after some back and forth, he decided that he would come and give it a shot. And I told him, man, you come here, you know, obviously I know I've got to pay the freight, but I think what I'll be able to give you in terms of marketing and in terms of promotion, in terms of guidance and management, can help launch your career. He is going to be one of the great health coaches and lecturers and speakers of all time. I give a frame of reference for why I say that. Some of you all know a little bit about my past, that I've represented professional athletes. I've represented boxing champions, 2 heavyweight champions of the world, Riddick Big Daddy Bowe and Michael Spinks. And I've represented Steve Francis, the first-round draft pick, Juan Dixon, Chris Wilcox, Lonnie Baxter, a bunch of those folks, some first-round draft picks. And one of my best friends is Kenny Williams. Kenny Williams is the senior-ranking African-American in Major League Baseball. He is the president of the Chicago White Sox. And so I hang out with Kenny in training camp. And in training camp, they have their conditioning people there. They have their nutritionists there, the best that money can buy. Lamont Jones, a dear friend of mine, he ran the U.S. Olympic track and field program for a while. And so we hung out in Colorado. I had the opportunity to be around the best trainers, the best nutritionists in the world that money can buy. And at 32 years old, I have found Nathaniel Jordan to be as good, if not better, than all of them. So his future is absolutely bright. His rocket ship is taking off. It's being launched right here in Washington, D.C. Over the last week, we've gotten calls from Los Angeles, back in his hometown of St. Louis, Missouri, Jefferson City, Missouri, New York, and Tampa? Is that Tampa, Florida? Tampa, Florida. They're catching on to his message, to his passion, and to his sincerity, and to his brilliance when it comes to talking about diet and attempting to get healthy. His exposing a diabolical group of corporate entities that are for hire, that are much more interested in profit than they are interested in people. So get to him in just a second. What I want to say very quickly, because we now have a live streaming audience, is that this event is the third part of a 7-part health lecture series, and it's being held every month here at the greatest institution of higher learning in the history of the world, Howard University. Each month focuses on a different topic: high blood pressure, diabetes, prostate cancer, breast cancer, weight loss, food addiction, what Nathaniel calls the 12-headed monster of food addiction. And anybody out there in live streaming land or here locally that really wants to start the journey of helping to move themselves towards health, part of what you've got to understand is that 12-headed monster, and I've never heard anyone break it down like Nathaniel Jordan does. We can bring any of these health lectures to you out there in live streaming land. If you would like to have Nathaniel to come speak, you go to his website, www.theministerofwellness.com. That's www.theministerofwellness.com. Or you can call me. My telephone number is 301-782-2800, or send me an email at rock@rocknewman.com. That's rocknewman.com for any speaking engagements that might include either Nathaniel or myself. I really want to emphasize the critical nature of today's lecture, which we feel really needs to be heard by every single American concerned with mental health and reducing crime and violence. There is an escalation, there is an epidemic of crime and violence right here in the nation's capital. There is a direct correlation, and of course Nathaniel will be able to articulate that correlation much better than myself. I won't even try it. That's what he's for here. This particular lecture really is a tiny portion of the wealth of information in fast food genocide. I'm supposed to have a book here with me to show you fast food genocide, but I don't have it. But there's a book that you can purchase out here tonight. They have been flying off of his website shelves. I think we have 11 or 12 here, but you can go to his website and order also. There are 3 other books, and we're going to briefly go over each and want to emphasize to all of you live viewers that they can go to the website. The website, again, is theministerofwellness.com, and you can purchase any of the books. I'm telling you, when you read the first, frankly speaking, I didn't finish this book. I read the first 100 pages, and I have an extremely large family, and I have 2 great nieces. Great nieces. They were born about a week apart, and now they're about 1 year old. And when I understood what they're putting in our baby's baby food and the diet that our elementary school kids are consuming, if our worst enemy from a foreign country was doing what our school systems are doing to our kids, we'd be talking about going straight to war. We are in the midst of a humongous battle. And this young brother right here is a general who is going to lead the way to enlightenment. So I'm happy that all of you are here to see him. We have with us also, you all know Cortland Malloy. the columnist from the Washington Post, who's famous for many things, including calling a lot of the folks, millennials and gentrifiers in this area who have moved in, myopic twits. Y'all know Cortland Malloy. Well, Cortland did a story on the lady here. She normally comes up and speaks, but we're really on a short time window here. But it's Gwen from Green Fair Organic Cafe out in Herndon, Virginia. He did a story to talk about what her journey has been after her fiance dropped dead, a fit fiance dropped dead at 50 years old from a heart attack. And she came out of an extraordinarily successful, highly lucrative career to start a restaurant, but more important than it being a restaurant, it is a movement. It is a movement to inform people about the perils of the American diet, what Nathaniel calls SAD, the standard American diet that is killing us. And according to Nathaniel, who knows what he's talking about, and Cortland Malloy, it is simply the finest, most purest food in a restaurant that is served in this area, and I think one of only 6 that is certified as fully organic. So Gwen, thank you for being with us. She is going to have she has some meals prepared similar to the ones that she has at her restaurant. So please, patronize her. And I think that's, that's about it. I'm gonna take the liberty to do this because I can. Last year, I couldn't button this shirt. I still have a long ways to go. I am not yet anybody's swimsuit model. But I am like on my way without any worries or concerns, because this brother has helped me to connect those dots that I never could, and has helped give me the formula that is a formula that really guarantees success. And the 74 pounds that I have lost since January the 15th, Martin Luther King's birthday, 2018, have come when at best I will call myself a C student. So if there are any of you who are in this room tonight and out there in live streaming land who feel as if you can't do it, please allow my testimony to be one to inspire you. And I swear to God, I cannot imagine that any of you could have had a worse diet, worse lack of exercise, because after I would eat that 2 o'clock fried chicken meal, you know what I would do next, go home and lay down and drool on myself. I have a new lease on life, and it is available to all of us. And this brother right here, the Minister of Wellness, Nathaniel Jordan, will share his knowledge with you to give you that new lease on life also. So God bless you, and thank you so much for coming. The Minister of Wellness, Nathaniel Jordan, the microphone is yours.
Good evening. So as always, I thank Brother Rock for his gracious introduction, to Howard University for allowing us to use this great institution for this mission that we're on. Brothers and sisters, I thank you all for supporting this work by making an investment in your health tonight. Genocide by diet, how junk food is creating an epidemic of mental illness and violence in America, but especially within the Black community. I want to prepare you all mentally that this is the most serious health lecture that I will ever give in my life. Everyone in this nation, from the senators on down to the single mom in the projects, needs to hear this message. You all ready for the truth this evening? All right. That was dead. You all ready for the truth? All right. All right. Now, I do want to give credit where credit is due, and Brother Rock touched on it earlier. A lot of this lecture that I'm about to give is a tiny microcosm of the wealth of information in this great textbook. And yes, I only have 11 copies left. However, once again, as Brother Rock mentioned, you can go on my website and purchase copies of this textbook. This book was written, Fast Food Genocide, by Dr. Joel Fuhrman and co-authored with Brother Robert Phillips. Dr. Fuhrman is a multiple New York Times best-selling author, and he has been helping people prevent and reverse disease for almost 30 years. I'm one of his success stories. Over 6 years ago, I lost 100 pounds, believe it or not, and I reversed high blood pressure. But Brother Robert Phillips, his testimonial is even more powerful than mine. He reversed sarcoidosis over 10 years ago. He worked for Merrill Lynch Anti-Terrorism Force, and now he is helping Fuhrman, and he helped to produce much of the research in this book. So I want to thank them for giving me the permission to take, again, just a tiny sample of the information in this book, and then combine it with the voice of thunder that our Creator has blessed me to have, so that I can inspire you all this evening, and hopefully, of course, that everyone will receive this information. My brothers and sisters, we are amid an apocalyptic time as a nation. We are facing the complete debilitation of future generations if we don't start addressing and overcoming the million-pound elephant in the room. And that's the foundation of all positive change, our diet. Our unwillingness to discuss radically changing our diets because of addiction to these highly fake processed frankenfoods is contributing, not the sole cause, but it is a large contributor to the epidemic of mental illness, chronic disease, and crime. My goal as your minister of wellness tonight, and I'm going to ask you at the end that I achieve my goal, and I want you to give me an honest answer, is that you will leave here with the understanding that there is not a single social issue facing our nation that we can detach from what we eat. Almost every single male child in America is now on the autism spectrum. Now, some are just worse than others, but mental illness is destroying the next generation. Am I right? And the reason why things are getting worse is because we want to detach our poisonous comfort food diet from unhappiness, despair, genetic mutation, and DNA damage. But the science is too strong, and we are too debilitated mentally and physically to continue in this mythical mindset. The diets of mothers, even before conception, has profound effects in determining the health, the immune system strength, and intelligence of her child. Yet because of horrific advice being given by OBGYNs, millions of mothers in ignorance are literally poisoning their children before they're born. And then they're born 9 months after being poisoned in the womb. And here comes the medical industry. They'll immediately stick them with numerous vaccines loaded with neurological poisons like mercury and lead and aluminum and even embalming fluid. And we wonder why childhood cancer is now the leading cause of death in our children outside of accidents. And we have lead scientists that are predicting that at the rate we're going, half of all of our boys will be full-blown autistic. This is a social justice message. There cannot be a discussion on the well-being of children and infant mortality without including their systematic destruction by food and medicine. You all look shocked already, and I'm just getting started. You all right? Whether you're talking about learning disabilities, poor school performance, aggression, despair, diet, what we eat plays a significant role in these issues. We cannot drug our way out of mental and physical illness. We've tried and we continue to try, and it's a disaster. Medicine, the medical industry, is the #1 cause of death and bankruptcy in America. Hiding symptoms of a diet-induced disease is futile, especially since when you use a pill to hide symptoms, the pill destroys hundreds of other bodily functions. Am I right about it? Despite spending almost 30% of our entire national income on health care, we remain the most overweight and sickliest nation in world history. And Black Americans, we lead in every single negative health category, I'm sad to say. The #1 cause of death in Black men ages 14 through 35 is homicide. Aggression and violence continues to plague our communities, yet not one social effort focuses on the role our brain-damaging diet plays in violence. Unhealthy foods even perpetuates drug addiction and other crimes. Oh yeah, the science has been written in stone on these things for decades. I'm gonna show you that later. The science is just being hidden from the masses. It's a pipe dream to believe we will ever stop killing each other until we get down to the root cause of mental illness: diet. Compared to whites, Black Americans living in inner cities, 40 or less likely to complete high school, 47% more likely to develop high blood pressure, 50% more likely to die from heart disease. This is genocide by diet at work right in our communities, but we're ignoring it because of food addiction. 80% more likely to suffer from fatal stroke, 77% more likely to develop diabetes, 4 times more likely to develop kidney failure, we get the same cancer, but then we die from it much more aggressively. And then we're almost 2 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's and dementia. Those terrible health statistics are directly linked to diet. But here's what else is linked to diet: diminished concentration and intelligence is also linked to what we eat. It's high time we understand and accept without a shadow of a doubt that we are what we eat. We're passing down damaged genes and DNA to our children, leading to the perpetuation of the myth of genetic superiority by influential races who support eugenics. However, the science shows that chronic disease and mental illness is far more influenced by environmental exposure and diet, with only a relative small influence from genetics. You all following me? So I don't care what your big former controlled puppet of a medical doctor told you or told you about your child. Nutrition overpowers genetics. As a matter of fact, nutrition can change your genes. Nutrition can change who you are. We're 70 years behind the science. You all look shocked. The Nazis knew this 70 years ago. And that's why they had the most advanced nutritional program for their time. Even the devil himself, Adolf Hitler, was a vegan. When we accept the myth that some are just born to be physically and mentally ill, it does far more harm than simply justifying our food addiction. And that's why we're doing it. You know, Uncle Bob dies of a heart attack and we just want to blame it on, well, Uncle Bob's heart just gave out. We don't want to talk about them barbecue chitlins and that fried food that Bob was eating, Uncle Bob was eating. We don't want to relate that to his heart attack. Okay? Now, that's because of our food addiction. We're trying to protect our food addiction. But when we do that, you're giving credence to white supremacy. We have eaten ourselves into a social crisis that is neither understood nor appreciated. Why? Why is it so hard? Why, before I even came up here, I'm seeing negative comments on the live stream about you telling me a bag of potato chips can contribute. Why are we so detached from the fact that our brain controls our behavior and our brain is controlled by what we eat? Why is that so hard for us to understand? Food addiction. Food addiction. It all goes back to food addiction. Follow me here. It's not comfortable to be a crackhead and talk about other crackheads. Am I right? Likewise, it's not comfortable to talk about how white flour, white sugar, white pastas, and all of these other it's not comfortable to talk about how our favorite foods are contributing to black-on-black crime. But for the sake of our children, it's time we get uncomfortable before it's too late. And I commend every last one of you for coming out here this evening and having the courage to get uncomfortable with me. Because it's not easy. It's not easy, but we have to do it. It's time to end the nonsense, the complicated shenanigans of the medical industry. We already have the answers to autoimmune disease, breast cancer, prostate cancer, mental illness, and all of these other diseases. The answer has existed for millions of years before there was ever big pharma. A nutrient-dense, plant-rich diet. But the food industry has loaded the supermarkets with fake foods pumped with psychiatric drugs that are so dopamine stimulating that too many of us would rather suffer and die than to give up the high we get from these favorite Franken foods. Let me give you an example. We'll poison our cells over the course of many years until those poisoned cells clump together and form a tumor. That's called cancer. You all follow me? And then instead of facing the fact that the tumor came about because of diet, we march around. We march around. And then we demand a magical pill from a for-profit cancer industry to instantly take away a tumor that took 40 to 50 years of poor nutrition to develop, as if they gonna bankrupt themselves and give us that type of pill in the first place. That mentality, that insane reasoning, speaks to the incredible ignorance that we are operating on when it comes to the critical role diet plays in every facet of our lives. So, before I delve deep into the science, you all with me so far? Before I delve deep into the science showing how our food addiction is causing all of these social problems in our communities, I have to give you a basic understanding of food addiction. Now, next month's lecture, July 26, 6 p.m., we'll be right back here. The entire lecture is going to focus on the 12 components of food addiction that I've identified. 12 components. Okay? And most of those components I discovered from health coaching the most hard-headed client that I've ever had in my life, and that's Brother Rock Newman. So you can credit him for next month's lecture. But here, for the sake of this lecture, and in all my lectures, you'll always notice I go over some fundamentals of food addiction. Why? Because it's the addiction why we won't face these issues. It's the addiction. It's the addiction to the very foods wreaking havoc in our society that will keep many from accepting the bulletproof science that I'm about to bring out. Feel free to go to Fast Food Genocide. There's like 700 scientific studies in there. Okay, but some people will never be convinced because they don't want to give up their favorite Franken foods. Again, you cannot hate the taste of green vegetables and be addicted to dairy ice cream and really become an advocate for the overhaul of the diet that we need to effect the change that we need. Does that make sense? So, we are what we eat. If we want to prevent and reverse all disease, we must eat a diet high in micronutrients in comparison to the calories that we consume. Real food is supposed to give us two things. This is very important. Macronutrients and micronutrients. Macronutrients, that's protein, carbohydrates, and fat. That's where we get our calories. Okay, anything we consume that has calories, those calories come from those three sources. You all follow me? Now, real food is also supposed to give us micronutrients. Micronutrients are vitamins, minerals, and phytochemicals. Now, we're eating a diet that is completely devoid of micronutrients. And that's a problem because those are our medicines. Those are our medicines. The micronutrients is what you want to focus on. The dieting industry, which is a hoax, they only focus on the calories. High carb, low fat. they are just juggling calories. And so because you never focus on the micronutrients, you stay in a state of starvation, and eventually, as many of you all can attest to, you'll stay on that vicious cycle of yo-yoing your weight up and down. So we want to focus on micronutrients. Our health is dependent not on juggling macronutrients, but on the amount of micronutrients we consume. So don't worry about the quantity of protein. Worry about the quality. So instead of trying to get your protein from a diseased animal, you'd rather get a high quality of protein from greens, beans, nuts, and seeds. You all following me? The same thing with carbohydrates. Okay, there's nothing wrong with sugar, but you don't want to get your sugar, obviously, from candy and sodas and so forth. You want to get your sugar from fresh fruit. And then the same with fat. Instead of dairy and, yes, even oils, you want to get your fat from the whole food source like nuts and seeds. We are not letting food be our medicine and medicine be our food. We're not doing it. We're eating these foods, Franken foods, designed for the purpose of making you an addict. Cookies and crackers and chips and breakfast bars and donuts and pancakes and waffles and breakfast cereals and lunches and lunch meats and deli meats and all of that other garbage. Okay, and these foods is no better than illicit drug usage. And here's the sad thing. Most of these Franken foods could be made healthfully. You can have healthy cookies and crackers and cakes from whole natural plant ingredients. So why don't they do it? Why won't they just give you the whole food source? Why give you the Franken foods? Because when you take a plant and strip it of all of its nutrients, it turns it into a psychological drug. So they don't want you to have the whole food source. They want you to be an addict to Franken foods because they want you to get sick so you can get on them toxic cancer-causing medications. Due to the extreme social ills that these Franken foods are causing, I'm hoping I'll have someone that will agree with me that these Franken foods should be outlawed. When we eat Franken foods with no micronutrients, the first and greatest component of food addiction of all is the pleasure trap. These micronutrient deficient foods shoot up the brain with dopamine. Dopamine is the pleasure hormone. That's what the crackhead feels when he shoots up. You know that feeling when he gets high? Well, it's the same thing with food. We're shooting up with food. And the more of the dope food you shoot up with, the more you need, because the dopamine receptors in the brain will deaden. So you need more and more of the dope food. And then the fatter you become from your addiction, you need even more dope food because you have even fewer dopamine receptors than you did when you were a smaller food addict. Make no mistake about it. The high people get from these Franken foods is more powerful than any other stimulant on the planet. I've been health coaching people. I've health coached about 100 people over the last 6 years, and I have coached people who have overcame every single addiction known to man, highly successful in every other facet of their lives, but they cannot defeat the standard American diet. This is the greatest weapon of mass destruction that we've ever faced. Second component to understand, these Franken foods turn leptin off. Leptin is the hunger regulating hormone that tells you to stop eating. When leptin is turned off, you can be as big as a house, or in this case, bigger than a house, and still can't stop eating. See, when we eat the frankenfoods, all of the carbs in the food gets processed as sugar. Too much sugar causes the pancreas to panic, excrete too much insulin to pull that sugar out of the blood. Too much insulin shuts off leptin. And so you can go to the Chinese buffet and eat all day until you need your whole family and friends to help you to the car, you so full. And then you collapse at home, barely move, and then 4 hours later you at another death shack. That's leptin being turned off. Leptin being turned off. In all seriousness, this is wickedness at work. Look at the rat. They test the frankenfoods on the rats, and sometimes they'll watch the rats eat the frankenfoods until their stomach explodes. And then they feed them to us. And look at what we do. We'll eat this mess until our heart explodes. That's a heart attack. Until our brain explodes. That's a stroke. Or until our cells get so rotten they clump together, form a tumor, then the tumor acts like a Pac-Man and eats everything from the inside out until the cancer patient dies. Nothing but skin and bones. We have let the demonic food industry turn us into a nation of illogical lab rats. Third component of food addiction. Remember, this is just a foundation. The third component of food addiction is that when you consume micronutrient deficient foods, they build cellular toxicity within your cells. Your body can only detox in a state of fasting. Forget what you heard on TV. Your body can only truly detox when you're not eating. Most Americans are too uncomfortable without food. Every 3 hours, you will be honest, what do you feel? Stomach growling, am I right? Head hurt, shaky, irritated. Some people bend all over until they get to the vending machine and they barely make it, and then pop something in their mouth and then they pop right back up. That's not hunger. That's not hunger. Okay, that's toxic hunger. True hunger is felt right here in the mouth and in the throat. True hunger releases you from the bondage of food. When your cells are clean, you can live as long as possible until your body needs an absolute need for food. And it's so liberating. Like for most of the times before I come up and speak, I don't eat. I haven't eaten since yesterday. And you can obviously see that I'm not at a loss for energy. Am I right? So we have to get back in touch with true hunger. The final component of food addiction before we move on from this section is the bad bacteria that builds in our guts when we eat the frankenfoods. Now, Candida albicans is just one. There's many more, okay, but I chose Candida albicans for two reasons. First of all, is more commonly known, and then second of all, is one of the easiest forms of bacteria to pronounce, because the other ones have about 50 letters in them. Now, so when we eat the frankenfoods, it compromises our gut flora. And so we have a living form, an alien form that has been built in our guts that will literally send signals to your brain to eat junk food. So many of your sugar cravings, your cravings for fried food, your cravings for oils, many of those cravings is being produced by bad bacteria in your gut. And this is just one of many. Brothers and sisters, this is a monster. I just went over 4 components of the 12-headed monster, keeping us in this perpetual state of watching nearly all of our children are overweight and obese. and yet we still don't want to relate that to our food. So now, since you all have that basic understanding, it's time that we take a scuba dive into what is being birthed from our food addiction. You all learning so far? Many of our children are suffering insidious brain damage due to a lack of access to healthy food. Research shows that poor glucose control leads to a shortage of self-control and a propensity for violence. As a matter of fact, the rate of crime in each city goes up as you track diabetes. This correlation remains strong even when controlled for income. Pay attention. The science shows that disease is more closely linked to crime than economics. They've done studies whereas a person's diabetes worsen because of the effect it has on the brain, they become less able to forgive. And with the epidemic of diabetes sweeping across our nation, across all boundaries of race and socioeconomics, Black Americans, we're nearly 80% more likely to develop diabetes than white Americans. In 2014, 8.5% of New Jersey residents had diabetes. That's diagnosed. That's not pre-diabetes. That's not those who don't even go to the doctor to get diagnosed. That's too much. But in the Black community, it was almost twice that. Low academic, crime, poverty afflicts the Black community of Camden, just like it's doing right here in Washington, D.C., in my hometown of St. Louis, and in too many of our communities all across the United States. And despite complex societal factors and other variables, no one is saying that food is the sole cause, but what we're saying is that it is a major, yet untalked about, contributor to the conundrum of disease, violence, and crime. Just as excessive sugar causes diabetes, it is clear it also causes aggression and violence. GABA, neurotransmitter, right here, controls feelings of anxiety and fear, nearly poured out by the frankenfoods. Taurine, mood swings, temper tantrums, diminished by our diet. Glutamine controls your ability to pay attention and aggressive behavior. Melatonin controls blood pressure, depression, aggression, growth and development in children. Vitamin B6 regulates serotonin, the feel-good hormone. These are nutrients and hormones in our brain that cannot work properly because of our diet. Glycine keeps you from having mental breakdowns and nervous disorders. These nutrients can't work. Our brains can't work. What I've just gone over with you has been known for decades. The standard American diet is being used as a form of biological warfare against the brains of the masses, especially Black children. The human brain, the most complex structure known to humanity, is under attack. The brain, so much more than any other organ in our body, is exquisitely dependent on micronutrients. And even tiny amounts of unnatural foods can damage our brains. It's very clear, my brothers and sisters, that your creativity, your concentration, your work ethic, your determination, your patience, your intelligence, your happiness levels, all of those behaviors depend on sufficient micronutrient exposure early in life. The diet we're eating is making it impossible for our brains to function properly. Without sufficient micronutrients only found in abundance in whole natural plant foods, you cannot function properly in everyday life. And if you think you're functioning properly, well, I'm doing just fine, I don't know what you're talking about. If you think that, I guarantee you, start eating to live, feed your brain right, wherever you're at right now, you will be able to perform 100 times better. The standard American diet is beyond sad. S-A-D, standard American diet. It's beyond sad. It's chemical terrorism. I mean, look at the chart. Look at the chart here. Only 11% of calories come from colorful produce. Only 11%. But guess what? It's much worse than that. Because the government counts French fries as vegetables. Ketchup as vegetables. The truth is, most Americans consume less than 3% of their calories from colorful produce. I've thought about that. And I've come to the conclusion that you could not have designed a better diet to create mental illness than if you paid the devil himself to do it. The standard American diet does not contain the vast amount of micronutrients and fatty acid balance needed for our brains to function optimally. Unhappiness, sadness, anxiety, and anger are all subclinical deficiencies that are far too common in everyday. I tell you, I am happy and thankful to our Creator every day. I make it home after driving on these roads with all of this anger and road rage. As a matter of fact, we had a poll carried out by CNN in 2015, and they revealed that 69% of Americans are angry. The standard American diet is missing not only micronutrients, but a special class of micronutrients called phytochemicals. Phyto means plant. There are thousands and thousands of phytochemicals found in colorful produce that are not optional for brain health. They're not an option. We have over 100 billion nerve cells in our central nervous system called neurons. Every one of those 100 billion are dependent upon phytochemicals. Phytochemicals are required for the prevention of brain pathology. Our brains are what we eat. It's bad enough that we're eating a diet deficient in micronutrients. It would be bad enough if the foods were organic. And we have many health stores. I'm here to tell you this evening that most of our favorite health stores are still full of junk food. But at least they're trying to make it organic. The processed food industry, they load their foods with over 10,000 extra FDA-approved chemicals. And then what's most evil and racist of all is this brain-damaging diet is being forced upon millions of our children living in food deserts. And I, for one, don't believe for a second that that's solely by accident. This is the hardest part of the entire lecture for me to get through. 1 in 8 adolescents is now diagnosed as clinically depressed. And many more have milder forms of mood disorders. Depression is now the leading cause of disability in our children, ages 5 and older. Psychiatric drug use is skyrocketing. 1 out of every 6 Americans is taking a psychiatric drug. That's already horrific because most of them don't work and they have scary side effects like depression, hallucinations, suicidal tendencies, homicidal tendencies. So it's bad enough that we have so many adults taking drugs that could perpetuate them shooting up a mall. But now we have millions of children taking these drugs. Over 4 million children ages 6 through 12 are taking psych drugs. 400,000 toddlers taking psych drugs. Gets worse. 300,000 nearly babies under the age of 1 taking psych drugs. And the numbers are much worse because we have psychiatrists who are issuing babies off-label psychiatric drugs for purposes the drugs aren't even intended to treat. Experimenting on the brains of babies. And no one talks about this in relation to the epidemic of school shootings. Can I keep on telling the truth this evening? No one relates this. Make them brain damage with the food. Turn them over to the psychiatric industry. And then they get in the hallucination, shoot up their whole classroom, and nobody thinks for a second about how it started. Because the ones profiting from this suffering and this death, they control nearly every facet of our society. You all right? It starts with the food. That wouldn't be possible. That wouldn't be possible if we weren't addicted and then making our children addicted. I forgot to mention in the last slide that the #1 prescribed psych drug isn't ADHD. We all hear about that, right? That's what you all probably thought, like, okay, the ADHD. No, not even drugs for depression. Anti-anxiety. The #1 prescribed psychiatric drugs for 1-year-olds is anti-anxiety medications. A 2011 study showed that our favorite frankenfoods, pizzas, sausages, what we're going to be eating for the 4th of July, I gotta start stepping on some toes. I'm sorry. Our favorite Franken foods. For each dose you eat, you increase your risk of depression by 51%. 2015 study did the same thing with the high sugar foods. Same thing. Depression, anxiety. We all know this is true, even me. I'm in the fight with you. We all know it's true. We eat something high in sugar, we experience that sugar crash, and we can see a change in our mood. Am I right? So we're underestimating. What we're doing is underestimating the cumulative effect that these Franken foods are having on our minds and the brains of our children. But TV knows. TV knows once you pop, the fun don't stop. Even when you want it to stop, or even when it's popping your heart, you still can't stop. See, they making fun of us. You go 4 hours without eating a Snicker and you turn into a sociopath. That's hunger. You've seen the commercials, right? A person turn into a whole different person until they get their sugar. So they're telling us right in the commercials, and we miss it because we're laughing and we miss it so you're telling me that just because I don't get my fix, I'm going to turn into somebody I'm really not. There is no moderation in our bodies. I'm sorry. I stand here before you today just a human being, a man of flesh and blood just like you. I'm in this fight also. That's why I can help you all. I've lost 100 pounds and kept it off for over 6 years, and every day I still got to fight myself not to go back to the foods that got me to 260. Every day. I'm being propelled by knowledge, and I'm giving you that knowledge. That's what keeps me from going to IHOP and eating two plates of pancakes. It's the knowledge. It's the knowledge. It's not because I'm better than you. You can do it too. You can do it too. If I can do it, you can do it. But you have to understand there is no moderation. There is no moderation. What we eat only does two things: either poisons us or gives our body medicine. These foods, they tested them on 5-year-olds. They made the 5-year-olds moody, less unhappy, more hyperactive. Decreased their ability to learn and develop verbal skills. Special education would go bankrupt if we start feeding our children properly. It's clear when you shoot the brain up with sugar and then that sugar drops, it causes nervousness, irritability, and full-blown aggressive outbursts in susceptible individuals. This is a social justice issue. We cannot talk about childhood behavior without discussing diet. And with that said, I do want to commend somebody from Prince George County. Before I came up here, they sent me a long email saying, when the schools come back, brother, you have to talk. We want you to talk to all of our teachers about food. And I'm going to give them this lecture. That's excellent news. We have to change. Deficiencies is not just the high sugar foods. The whole standard American diet is destructive. This is probably the worst of all. Deficiencies. There's 4 fatty acids that are critical for controlling behavior in our brain that is being sabotaged by the standard American diet. Pay very close attention to this. This is going to knock your socks off. DHA, docosahexaenoic acid. EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid. When the brain is deficient in one of those fatty acids, direct linked to aggression. Direct link. Omega-6 fats versus omega-3 fats. Omega-6 fats are mostly coming from these oils and fried foods. We get omega-3 fats from green vegetables. We don't consume enough omega-3, so we have an imbalance of omega-6 to omega-3. Direct link to violence. Fried foods cause birth defects, autoimmune disease in children, scars brain tissue, aggressive behavior, and violence. And the average American is consuming over 400 calories from omega-6 oils in the form of fried foods. We have some places in the South where they fry salad. Unbelievable. A fried salad. Your omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acid balance for normal behavior should be 4-to-1. You all following me? So 4-to-1 when you get a test. You go and you say, I want to get a test for these fatty acids, your level should be 4-to-1. Most Americans, 15-to-1. Guess what it is in many black communities in food deserts? 25-to-1. Behavior problems come when it's over 4-to-1. But in our communities, with 700 homicides in 1 year, 25-to-1. This is a social justice message. 800 military personnel committed suicide. Guess what they found? Those deficient in DHA, 62% higher likelihood of suicide. The homicide rate in the United States tripled between 1961 and 2000. Guess what else tripled? Omega-6 oil consumption. Come on, Minister Weldon, you just making stuff up. No, the National Institute of Health, they didn't believe it either, so they said, listen, we're going to really put this to the test. They took 12 different type of oils, soy, corn, canola, those are our favorites in these processed frankenfoods. And they looked at multiple countries, including our own. They couldn't believe it. They were like, no, we got to test this thing out. And they still found a direct correlation between the higher the omega-6 oils consumed versus homicide within that country. Deficiencies in DHA and EPA will lower your intelligence, causing poor school performance, aggression and hostility, anxiety and depression, brain shrinkage, memory loss, other cognitive problems, Alzheimer's, and dementia. Take it up with the National Institute of Health. I'm just a messenger. Too many of us are damaging our brains. Damaging our brains when we're young, the brains of our children. And then we continue to damage our brains as we get older. And then that leads us to the ultimate form of mental illness, Alzheimer's and dementia. We are in the midst of a tripling of Alzheimer's and dementia. A tripling. And within this tripling of Alzheimer's and dementia, Black Americans are 2 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's and dementia. So what I'm saying is that we don't start overcoming our greatest weapon, the school to prison pipeline is going to be replaced with the school to nursing home pipeline. The studies are clear. The children who eat a healthier diet perform better in school, better math skills, reading skills, verbal skills. It's clear. They're happier. They behave better, contrary to their peers who are being poisoned by frankenfoods. Am I making a believe out of somebody this evening? These frankenfoods destroys us from the inside out, and affects how we treat each other. It affects how we think, how we behave, and how we act. We cannot have a discussion on the chaos in our schools without discussing our diet. They even did an IQ test and showed that toddlers who eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, they score up to 8.5 years higher on their IQ test. And then they also showed that exercise is important too for the brain health of children. And that's been even shown in the mainstream. See, the mainstream, they're terrified of talking about diet because, see, that starts playing with the money. You all following? So they're reluctant to talk about diet, but I will admit, they will talk about exercise. So even many of you all should have heard that they will admit that exercise helps to relieve stress better than even the most powerful psych drugs. But most of our children are at home playing video games, eating Frankenfoods. Somebody was shocked when I told them that my 6 and 4-year-old, we don't have TV. They outdoors all day, like we used to do. Despite all this science that I'm bringing out, parents, future parents, despite all this science we're bringing out, we are sending our children off to school with a bunch of Frankenfoods, a bunch of sugar, a bunch of diseased animals. And then we expect them to learn. But then what's worse is that once we send them to school, the school lunch program is feeding our children food far worse than any other death shacks. Food rejected by McDonald's. No worries, we'll give them to your children at school. Food that that's so contaminated, even none of the death shack, the Burger King, all of them, they won't accept it, and they'll just take it and give it to the schools and give it to our children. The school to prison pipeline starts with the nutrition they're giving our children. We absolutely can't tolerate that. That lunch line should be empty. That breakfast line should be empty. There should be no children in that line until their pockets break and they feed our children the diet of human beings. Brothers and sisters, if we could come together and boycott for the sake of where we sit on a school bus or on a bus, surely we can come together and boycott for the sake of the health of our children. Anybody with me on that? Slowly coming to an end, parents, grandparents have to step on our toes again, that we are the biggest culprits. We are the biggest culprits, let's be honest. You all made it out here to get uncomfortable. I commend you all, so let's be honest. Now, you all are going to change after this, right? Who's going to change and start feeding their children the foods that they need? That's what I'm talking about. So, but up to this point, we have not done that. Every single American norm revolves around destroying our brains with food. Yeah, July 4th around the corner. Around the corner. Well, I'll keep that tape from the Minister of Wellness up, but I'm frying my ribs now, Minister. I'll start July 5th. It's high time that we change this, because you all have now learned that the diet you feed your children affects their emotional stability, their happiness, and their ability to achieve an optimal education. And even if, despite the Frankenfoods, your child does achieve a great education,
It could have been much easier had they had a fully functioning brain. I just talked to a nearly straight A student that I'm health coaching right here at Howard, and he told me since he's changed his diet, he can think much better. So we're making their years in school much more difficult. And then what I'm saying is, what difference does it make if they get the education, achieve economic sustainability, but then they die in their 30s and 40s and 50s? That's the death train that I don't even want us to put our children on in the first place. So let's start now with protecting the health of our children. I have two more social ills that I need to link to diet before I close this evening. I just want to reemphasize, moms. I just want to reemphasize, parents, that it's not just a diet during pregnancy. This is real prenatal care. I can't wait until I get an email when someone invites me to speak to a room full of potential mothers and pregnant women. They need to hear this. It's not just a diet during pregnancy. It's the diet before conception. You can damage your child before they get here. Those eggs that will be used to produce your child is in you from the time you're born. And the sperm, thank you. Absolutely. Father's the same thing too. So you can damage your sperm, damage the eggs, and then the two come together and produce a child, and you have made a drastic increase in the chance of your child coming out with autism, leukemia, childhood cancer. It's a fraud. Stealing people's money. It's linked to a lack of green vegetable consumption by the parents during pregnancy and before. You can nearly ruin your child's future years before they even get here. Personality disorders, ADHD, autism, brain cancer, blood cancer, all of those are influenced by the diet the mother and the father eats when they're children. So parents, when you're giving your children frankenfoods, you're not just destroying their health, you're destroying the health of your own grandchildren. This is the ultimate form of genocide by diet. Kill them before they get here. Destroy them before they get here. We don't want to wait until they become adults and get sick. No, that's too long. We want them on their medications from birth to death. That's the ultimate form. It's called epigenetics. We have been seduced into destroying the health of our children before they even breathe their first breath of life. They went into prison with violent adults. Somebody went into prison, and all they did was give them supplements for their brains. Antisocial behavior dropped almost 30%. They didn't even change their diet. They just gave them supplements for their brain and saw a change. They've duplicated this over and over. They went into a high school for troubled youth, cast away by society, given up on, told they will never amount to nothing. Let's just huddle them into a school together and watch them self-destruct. But somebody came in there. They took out candy, took out soda, replaced it with better food. Vandalism dropped. Explosions almost disappeared. Suspensions almost disappeared. Negative behavior, weapons violations, and even suicide attempts almost completely disappeared when they gave the troubled youth a chance to think correctly by simply changing their diet. And a behavior scientist named Iva Musteroo, she looked at all of this and almost in exasperation, she wrote in an article, "This is obvious. Get these freaking foods out of the prison. Change their diet. We really serious about reducing recidivism, reducing mass incarceration. We know that if we give the prisoners nutritional education with life skills, we could almost eliminate recidivism, because when the stresses of post-prison life come upon them, a nourished brain will allow them to make better decisions instead of poor decisions to throw them back into slavery." Have they listened? No. Because the prison industry is a trillion-dollar industry. They are not trying to reduce anything. They're not trying to reduce anything. Not even parental attitudes. Like I said, people that don't believe this, the scientists don't either. So they've already examined this to the core. Like they do not believe this themselves. So they said, okay, now look, man, it has to be parental attitudes. They had bad parents. Okay, that plays a role. That plays a role. They said, okay, man, this is some personality disorders. That played a role. That played a role. Man, this is a stressful home environment that caused them. That played a role. But still, the strongest correlation over and over and over between adult violent crime is the diet that they were fed when they were children. Last social problem, illicit drug usage. Illicit drug usage. Let me dispel this myth right here. Black people do not use illicit drugs more than other races. Am I right? That's a myth. That's a myth. All races and all socioeconomic classes in America is being debilitated and destroyed by drug abuse. As a former police officer for 7 years, I definitively state, without a shadow of a doubt, that the only reason why there are more black people in prison for drug-related offenses is 100% related to systematic racism within the criminal justice system. Am I right, I said? So now, since I've gotten that myth out of the way, we all, my fellow Americans, need to pay attention to what I'm about to say. A malnourished brain contributes to drug addiction. A malnourished brain contributes to drug. Now, once again, I have to keep repeating this, but I know somebody, their addiction's still not going to let them listen. I'm not saying it's the 100% cause of drug addiction, but it is a large factor that's not talked about. When they treat alcoholics with nutrition combined with their alcohol addiction classes, they do much better in overcoming their addiction. The frankenfoods are a gateway drug to other harder drugs. A malnourished brain constantly seeks pleasure to make it feel better, setting itself up for more harder drugs as a way with coping with life. So this is a social justice issue. This is the biggest social justice, civil rights issue facing our nation. Even alcoholics, crack addicts, heroin addicts, whatever they're doing in their treatment, there needs to be a significant component in their recovery talking about how to nourish their brains. And now, After 1 hour 7 minutes of giving you the bad news, I'm going to perform a magic trick. In one slide, in 2 minutes, I present to you the answer. A whole foods, nutrient-dense, plant-rich diet. That's it. All of the science that I have to go through, all of the convincing, all of that is to get through the genocide that has created this microcosm of ignorance. And then because the foods are so addicting, we want to be ignorant. So I have to weed through all of that just to get to this. Eat foods that human beings are supposed to eat. Let food be your medicine. Let me change that. Food, whether we like it or not, is our medicine. And medicine is our food. And if you don't let it be, well, we see the results. And these are the foods that we should use as the foundation of that plant-rich diet, the G-bombs. You should have this acronym memorized. All Americans should know this acronym. Greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. Your immune system special forces. The miraculous healing power in these foods is more incredible than anything you could possibly imagine. This is the answer to heart disease. This is the answer to stroke. This is the answer to diabetes. And these foods can start the healing process of our brains, so desperately needed to start the healing process in our communities. In conclusion, these frankenfoods are keeping our nation sick and our poor people poor. They become unable to escape the vicious cycle of poverty, disease, and crime. To solve this problem of disease, crime, and the disenfranchisement of a segment of our population, we must assure that everyone has access to the information in this lecture, access to healthy foods, and understands the importance of eating healthily. Now I ask, brothers and sisters, did I do my job tonight as your minister of wellness? Did I do my job? So I convinced you all that this is the most critical social and civil rights message that we're facing. I can go home with a clear conscience. Equal opportunity can only begin with the gift of a healthy brain. It is high time for a health revolution in America. And I have determined in my heart that although I went over some mighty mountains and the storms are destructive and the valleys may seem too wide, the truth about health and wellness will rise. My brothers and sisters, so help me God, I will not stop proclaiming the truth about health and wellness until wellness rolls down like waters and healing as a mighty stream. I will not stop until complete mental healing in all of our youth have occurred. And therefore they will beat their guns in the plowshares and their knives in the pruning hooks. Gang member will no longer fight gang member. And even throughout our most violent communities, they will no longer learn to war against each other anymore. I will not stop until this knowledge covers the entire earth as the waters cover the sea. We will sing a new song, different than what we sang during the civil rights era. One glorious day, when all forms of genocide have been overcame, we will proclaim in an accomplished sense that we overcame deep in our hearts. We did believe that we would overcome. God bless you all.
Well, can we give this brother a standing ovation? This is powerful. This message, this was a powerful, come on here. This is a powerful message, and you know this brother is what is needed right now. It's the right time, and if you all can spread the word about the message that he is delivering, it would be very, very much appreciated. And keep in mind, he's got books out there. Any CDs today? Any of his CDs? Not any CDs, but you can go to his website and get all of his stuff. And we frankly appreciate and need your support. So go out and take a look, see if you see anything you want. If you don't, you can go to the website. Thank you so much. We'll be back here July the 26th, right back here at the greatest institution of higher learning in the history of the world, Howard University. I'll see you outside.